Welcome to Real People, Real Matters. This is Diana Tulchinsky. Today we're at the Glenview Space, Arts of Life. I'm introducing Denny Fisher and Ted Grambarini.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, you're welcome.
We're excited to be here.
Yes, we are.
Denny, please tell me, when did you start Arts of Life?
So we are entering our 16th year. We started in 2000 in Chicago and opened this branch that you're at in 2010. We're a collective, we're two collectives of artists with intellectual disabilities. And what we do is we provide studio space, we provide facilitation to increase skill sets, and we provide equal decision-making workspace. So every month we get together and make decisions together. And the programs grow organically. So even though there are two locations, they're very different based on the people that work in them. Ted's, I think, a great example of the mission of the studio and how much it's grown. He has known about us for years, and he took his time deciding to be an art maker and committing to this kind of practice full time. And since he's been at the studio, his practice has grown. He's started a band. We have a teaching artist program that Ted facilitates, and he mentors other artists that come into the program. So it's kind of come full circle. Once you have a skill, we like to say that we want to work ourselves out of a job. Once Ted has a skill, we pass that skill off to him, and then he teaches it to people coming in.
Ted, please tell me how you met Denny.
I met Denny through a friend of mine. We were working at CIF, Hillary Marshall, actually. And then when Hillary was moved, when Hillary moved here, is when we actually met each other.
And what type of music do you like to play in your band?
Rock, rock, hip hop, rock, rap, jazz. So it's rather a eclectic.
Do you like world music?
Yeah, rock and roll. It's rather eclectic piece of art. Our music is rather eclectic, and part of that came from a guy that we had that was very into me and my disability. His name was John Sharp, and he and I actually started the band from the get-go, I think.
What is your intellectual disability? What is it like?
My intellectual disability is called cerebral palsy, and what that does is actually makes my muscles on my left side of my arm tight.
Is it painful to draw sometimes?
A little bit, but not that much.
Who was the co-founder or the person that inspired you?
I worked with a woman named Ronnie Kukulich as a residential support person, and she wanted to be an art maker, so I started the program with her and for her.
And what type of education did you have? It's really unique, like having like an art space and being a co-founder. But like, what drew you into this world?
Yeah, that's a good question because I'm definitely not an art maker. My background is in education, secondary education, English and psychology. I came into the field because my mom was a special ed teacher, and so I've spent my whole life having friends with intellectual disabilities and being around people with intellectual disabilities, and I didn't understand the barrier between people without disabilities and people with disabilities. I'm sure, Ted, you've experienced this too. Yeah. And so I came at the program from a space of wanting more equality and working together and building something together. And Ronnie was already an art maker, and she was unhappy, and she wanted her own art practice. And so my thought was that she could bring the art piece, and I would bring the disability piece and the equal decision-making piece to the program. And so we brought our strengths together and built it from there. Ronnie was unfortunately old enough that she came up in the institutional settings in the state of Illinois. So she was taken from her home when she was very young, 6 or 7 years old, and she grew up in institutions. And then as the state became more progressive, she was offered she was out of institutions into a nursing home, and then finally she was in what Illinois calls community integrated living arrangements, SILA programs. And she ended her life there. She died in 2010 of cancer.
Oh, cancer. Yeah, that must be hard. With cancer. And where in Illinois did you grow up?
I grew up in the Quad Cities on the Iowa-Illinois border, the Mississippi River.
So did you have experience of going to college or the Blackhawks College?
Yeah, I went to community college for 2 years, and then I transferred to Eastern Illinois.
Did you like the experience of having a junior college before you hit the articulation agreement?
Yeah, I enjoyed my community college education. I had really good teachers. I feel like I was also helping with Special Olympics. I feel like it kind of it was the first part of shaping my career, having a smaller, intimate school.
How was your internships after like the junior college or through Eastern University?
I did my student teaching practice in England, and I guess fortunately I learned through that I didn't want to be a teacher, but it was a nice experience. I mean, their education system is so much better than ours, but I did realize that wasn't exactly what I was looking for.
So like, did you have like a camp counseling experience that you?
I did through college. I think camp was what fundamentally shaped my opinion of supporting people with intellectual disabilities and what I wanted to do for a living. I worked as a camp counselor in upstate New York for a camp that supported adults with intellectual disabilities.
What type of job prospect did Eastern University, advertise for you?
Well, I went back home after school, so I went back to the Quad Cities, and really there's only a couple of programs that support people with intellectual disabilities in the Quad Cities. They're both old and really I didn't have the same philosophy, so that's what brought me to Chicago. I wanted to work for a smaller organization. I wanted to do something that was changing the system and not just working in the system as it was.
Do your parents were supportive, further against that, or what was their decision, like the risky business of going into this?
My parents have always been super supportive. I think now that the studio's successful and we're doing well, they can say how concerned they were when I first started, but I didn't feel it when I first started. They gave us a small loan to start the program. My dad was awesome. He built all of our easels. They found windows for us to paint on. They've always been super supportive.
How did you meet your husband and your family and your sweetheart?
Dave and I met in high school. We both worked at Ace hardware store.
Oh, adventures.
And then we dated for a couple of years, and then he went into the Navy, and that took him away, and we weren't together, and then we got back together.
Oh, and you followed him, or he followed you?
No, I didn't go with him, and so I don't know, it must be 15 years ago now, he just called me out of the blue.
Oh, wow, so.
We hadn't talked for 12 years, and
sparked his interest back then, old flame.
Yeah.
So what does he do now in Chicago?
He's a chef in the city. He and I actually have started a sister organization called Rogue Philanthropy, where the goal is to open a restaurant that's nonprofit that has no funders, and so that 10% profits would go to the studio.
And then how did like the struggle of Arts of Life led into your relationship with your husband? And
Well, Rogue is a product of that. Like him,
is he a sous chef or?
he's the executive director of Rogue, and then he does consulting at other restaurants throughout the city to make some money. But yeah, he's watched me struggle with the studio. Illinois is the worst state in the country for services for people with intellectual disabilities. So not only do we not get good funding, but we also don't spend it well. And so even when the studio's doing really well, we're just never quite doing as well as we'd like to do. And Dave's always tried to find a way to support me. And then 3 years ago, he came up with this concept of having a nonprofit restaurant and using it as a grant-making opportunity. So at some point, we would grant out that money to agencies and people.
Who does grant writing for Arts of Life? Do you have a person on staff?
We do. Her name's Emily Tuesday. She's been with the organization for 8 years.
How were your parents like? Were they supportive?
They were supportive from the get-go. Because I don't know if you know this, but my mom is a painter, and she went to an art school. My mom did, so that's when I started to get interested in doing artwork in Arts of Life, actually previously to this.
Did your parents meet Denny before, or?
When did they meet?
That's a good question. We hired you to DJ an event, and we had an open house, and your mom came.
Yeah,
So
they hired me to DJ an event, these guys did. And so after that's when I joined the Arts of Life, well, part-time, not full-time.
How do you like living with an independent housing outside your mom's home, and how do you like that, being on your own?
It's really great feeling to have my own apartment, although my parents bought it.
Oh, your parents. Oh, do you ever visit them, or?
Yeah, I visit them. They live in Evanston.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
No, I don't.
And how many people do you teach? Or your friends, or?
I teach about 4 or 5.
I don't know.
6.
There's
No.
2 classes of 6
No,
kids
one-
each.
There used to be 2 classes, but now it's 1 class of.
What do you like about drawing? Do you like to draw people, animals?
I like to go draw people, animals, things, you know, kind of go beyond what I know I'm capable of.
And how many pieces do you have in Arts of Life?
I have 4 or 5.
What?
No.
How many
How
pieces
many?
of art have you made?
How many pieces of art have I made?
That's a really good question that we probably don't know the answer to.
We probably don't know the answer to that one because I, for one, have not counted, and I am a good counter.
Oh, it is nice. So what do you draw with? Pencils, acrylics, colors, or?
I've started to use pencil, and then I've gone from there to use acrylic.
Ah, okay. What's your, have you ever done oils or like anything like that, or?
Oil pastels, no, because in my mind that gets on your hands most of the time, as painting does, but you know, I'm not worried about that so much.
What does your mom, like, how did your mom, like, introduce artwork or crayons when you were young?
I've done artwork. I've done crayons. Actually, crayons was the first tool I ever. Crayons and pencils were the first tool I've ever used, including markers and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Do you have lots of friends that cheer you on in your artwork and your teaching?
Yeah, I actually do. I actually got interested through John Sharp through teaching, and he actually piqued my interest because he asked me and another guy to do it. So ever since then, we've done it. You know, this is our fourth year of doing it, so it's really turned out great. As I told you guys earlier, back in there, I used acrylic.
What made you decide to use just black and white for this painting?
Because I thought it would be good just from a design perspective, just to use black and white because, well, I was from a design perspective, I thought it would be good just to use black and white.
So, I don't know, would you like to show your desk a little bit? You have a really cool setup at your desk.
Yes, Megan. As she mentioned, I do have a really cool desk setup.
Yeah, so you've got like this groove cut into your desk so that you can get nice and close and keep your supplies on the left and the right. You got an easel here for all of your works in progress. This is one I pulled out, Ted, that you finished recently that I thought turned out really nice. Window to the Soul.
Yeah.
And this is the one you're working on now.
Yeah.
It's got a reference of King Tut over there to use and a spot for paint and water.
Yeah.
Does Artists of Life do like anything like going to museums or gallery spaces, or how do the people vote where they're planning to travel?
That comes out of the studio meetings. They decide collectively what they want to do. We have field trip offerings that are art related every month. So we do get into the community, and then we submit to shows and exhibitions just like every other artist does. We work in the same way.
Where is this studio? What is the address of the studio?
The address is 1963 Johns Drive.
Thank you. And what are the plans for the artist? And as a co-founder of Arts and Life, what are the plans for in the future in a couple of years of what we can expect?
The big push right now is individual creative practices. We've brought in a marketing group, and we're increasing our development efforts to try and get everybody the right opportunities to show their work in the community.
And then, like, tell me if I'm interested in placing like a child into an agency, where would I find like Illinois' like rating of these agencies, like in a Google site and pamphlets?
Rating?
Like rating of how Illinois treats them. And
Oh yeah, there's a State of the State report that that you can look up. It's usually 2 years old, but you can look up how the state's doing against other states. And because Illinois consistently is not great against its other states, there's there's organizations across the state that monitor services. So that's probably the best place to go. They're called pass-through agencies. So you would go to them and they would work with you to try and come up with a plan and talk to you about, what you want and work with you to find agencies that would support your needs.
did you easily get funding through the bank or through like Illinois, or how was that struggle in the earlier life?
It was pretty easy. We started right before the state restructured its funding, so we're the only one in our classification. So we have a very specific classification with Illinois, and we're the only ones in it, and they're not offering any more like it because we were already in operation before they changed their funding structure. So it's a little bit hard. Right now, artists, if you want to come to the studio and get state funding, you have to prove that you can't work anyplace else before the state will let you come to the studio. So you don't really have a full choice of employment.
What's the difference between like the artists with intellectual disabilities versus like the mentally ill, the starving artist who has problems in life? Like, what's the the difference the state makes?
Well, the funding streams are different. So the state has, in the field, we call it silos. The state has a mental health silo, they have a disability silo, they have a Department of Aging, Department of Rehab. So it's based on your funding stream. So you can't cross funding channels. So we're a disability service provider. We work with people whose primary diagnosis is intellectual disabilities. Similar to the people that aren't disabled, some people also have mental illness, but our specialty is intellectual disability.
And then also, what are the categories of the special intellectual disabilities, the Down syndrome, cerebral palsy? Who do you allow in, and like the family?
Oh yeah, we'll support anybody who wants to be an art maker. Like we don't really consider your disability initially, only in a way that we know that it's intellectual, so that we can get the funding. But after that, if you're interested in being an art maker, we'd love to have you.
And what type of soft skills, do you teach like the people that want to become artists or entrepreneurs? Like, what are the promises?
Yeah, this is my favorite part of the studio. I think people come in, just because I'm not an art maker, people come in and they're drawn to the artwork, and that's great. We have a lot of great artists, but what I like that also happens in the studio is the leadership opportunities, the independent decision making, the collaborative decision making. We work so closely together, and we make all of our decisions together. There isn't a hierarchy between the artists and the staff and the volunteers, and so there's really an opportunity for you to make your own decisions, have an opinion about everything, and then build your confidence through all the opportunities that we have.
And then, is there a fee for the artist to pay up front, or when they get, how does that work? Is it fee-based?
For enrollment to come to the studio? Yeah, the fees are different based on where you come from. So we bill the state for folks that live in SILAs. We bill the state if you have what's called home-based waiver, or you can come through and privately pay. So it's kind of averages around $11 an hour.
When is a special ed person or intellectual disability cut off from Illinois funding? What happens at 12th grade or like when he hits a birthday?
So you can stay in the school system until your 22nd birthday through your 21st year, and then that very next day, the very next day you don't have services anymore. You move into the adult program, and the adult program is not as good as a special education program. So it's really quite shocking for parents. I think a lot of parents are just busy and they're a little bit in denial, and they really need to start as soon as possible trying to find good services for their children.
Thank you for this informative talk.
Thanks for coming. Our studio is open to the public Monday through Friday from 9 to 4. We would love to have anybody in.
We also publish a CD. Please check it out. Again, our name is Van Gogh.